In the previous lesson, we looked at alert dialogues, and I'm going to continue on that discussion, creating a custom dialog using a dialog fragment. So this button here, the orange button, brings up a dialog that has an icon, a title, a message, and then two buttons here, one that says Java, one that says Kotlin, and asks which will you use for your next project. So if I click Kotlin, it tells me I clicked Kotlin, and if I click Java, it says I clicked Java. So we're handling the response of the user. No different than what we've done with the alert dialogues, where we can choose a yes or a no. But the difference is this is done with a fragment. We'll talk about fragments in a future lesson, but fragments are sort of a layout within a layout, and they have their own life cycle. And that is why our textbook author suggested Dialog Fragment is a better choice than the alert dialogues, because the Dialog Fragment has its own life cycle and therefore can be maintained with persistence. We'll also look at how to build our own dialog using an XML layout. For now, let's focus on the Dialog Fragment and how that is created. A fragment is very similar to an activity, and we can embed fragments inside activities, but it's a separate class and a separate KT file. To create our Dialog Fragment dialog, we're going to create a new class, and I'm going to do that by right-clicking on the folder containing our main activity.kt file, choosing New, Kotlin class file, and then giving it a name. I called it SFH Dialog, since I've already created it. I'm going to make this one SFH Dialog 1. And then in the drop-down list here, I want it to be a class. Press the Enter key, and there is our new empty class file. Now, let me show you how I modified this. So I'm going to open up SFH Dialog KT. So we added some import statements. The first one here is androidx.fragment.app.dialogFragment. And this is an important one because there's an older version out there that is simply android.app.dialogFragment. And that one's been deprecated. So we're going to make sure we're using the AndroidX. And AndroidX is a support class that has a bunch of stuff built into it, including Dialog Fragment. We're also going to call android.appDialog, androidx.appcompat.app.alertDialog, the Android OS bundle, Android view.view. And you'll see that I imported the toast here, because originally I was going to have toast be a part of my Android dialog as far as the feedback, and you'll see some code here. I commented that out, so that's why this is great, because the toast is never used. But I wanted to talk about how to use toast in a dialog fragment and how to use snack bars in a dialog fragment, and they are slightly different than what you would do in the main activity KT file, where we're calling the alert dialog directly. You'll see I also imported snack bar here too, and don't really need a space between those. We'll add that in. So then we have our class of SFH dialog. Now I passed a view to it, so I added that in, and I did that because I need a view for the snack bar. It is inheriting from Dialog Fragment class. I added that into the class declaration, and then I created a variable called xyzView that is referring to my view, and that's the view that was passed. We're going to override our function of Oncreate Dialog, and the parameter here is saved instance state bundle ? So it's a nullable bundle. And this has to do with the activity lifecycle. So this Dialog Fragment has its own activity lifecycle, and we could actually save states for it if it was to be put into a pause state, for example. That's why our author, John Horton, of our textbook, suggests that this is a much better route than using the alert dialogs that don't have their own activity lifecycle. Okay, so the body of that function then is I created a variable called Dialog Builder, which is an alert dialog.builder, and I passed it this.require activity. And then we're going to build that Dialog Builder, just the way we built our alert dialogs in the previous lesson. So my message here is going to come from a string declaration of May 2019 that talks about Google announcing that Kotlin would be the preferred language moving forward for Android development. I set the icon to that Andy robot that we brought in the previous lesson, and then a title of a dialog fragment dialog is what I chose. I could have done those in any order. Then I set up our positive button, just like we did with the alert dialog in the previous lesson. And if you wanted to make a toast, I could display a toast. The thing to remember here is the toast, instead of this, you want to use get activity. And you'll see a reference here to a URL where I found some information about how to use toast inside a fragment. Snack bar is what I chose to use. So I commented out the toast. I made sure it worked. I commented out the toast, made a snack bar, and of course we're using make instead of make text. And here we are going to pass it a view, which is actually going to be the constraint layout from a main activity file. My text is you clicked Kotlin, and then I'm going to show that snack bar for a long period of time, which is 3 seconds, and dismiss my interface. Same thing on the negative. I'm using a snack bar. Actually, my text is Java. Up here it's Kotlin. We're asking the user which language would they use for their next project. And then a snack bar, you click Java, passing it the same view, length of long, dismiss. Now, this is a method that returns a dialog. So it's going to return Dialog Builder, and I'm going to create the dialog. So rather than doing .show, we're creating a dialog from our Dialog Builder to return to the calling statement. And that calling statement is in our main activity KT file. Let's take a look at that. Here's my function from the button, the orange button of Dialog Fragment, Dialog 1. So the view is referring to that dialog, V. I'm going to create a variable referencing my constraint layout for this XML file for the layout, and we're going to find CL main. I'm going to create a variable for SFH dialog. That's my custom dialog. That's from the dialog fragment, and it's coming from calling that class we just created, SFH dialog, and I'm passing it the constraint layout of my main layout called CL main. SFH dialog then is a new dialog, and I'm going to use .show, and here we're just going to pass it 2 parameters of support fragment manager and text of 123. We'll talk about fragments more down the road and what that actually means. That's our code of a new Kotlin file containing a class, calling that class, and that class returning a dialog that we then show when we click the button. And here again is our dialog fragment. Icon, title, message, and then our 2 buttons of Java and Kotlin, and they each create a snack bar. In the next video, we'll look at how to kind of do the same thing but using an XML file and calling it directly from our main activity. If you just jumped into this video, you can see all the videos from the Android App Development Cohort playlist by clicking on the image in the lower right. And if you'd like to be alerted to future videos that I create, you can click my picture up in the top right and subscribe to the channel.